Released in 2002, xXx introduced audiences to a different kind of action hero. Instead of following the polished style of traditional spies, the film embraced a world of extreme sports, underground culture, and fearless stunt performers. At the center of this bold new direction was Vin Diesel, whose charisma and physical presence helped define the movie's identity. Alongside him was an impressive supporting cast made up of experienced dramatic actors, respected character performers, and rising talents who each brought something unique to production. Their combined performances gave the film a memorable personality that helped separate it from other action movies of the early 2000s. Leading the cast was Vin Diesel as Xander Cage, an extreme sports celebrity recruited by the United States government to become an unconventional secret agent. Before xXx, Diesel had already begun building a reputation in Hollywood through determination and versatility. His breakthrough came with Saving Private Ryan in 1998, where director Steven Spielberg cast him after being impressed by a short film Diesel had written, directed, produced, and starred in himself. Although his role in Saving Private Ryan was relatively small, it demonstrated his ability to leave a lasting impression. Around the same time, Diesel voiced the title character in the animated film The Iron Giant, a performance that showcases distinctive voice despite having very little dialogue. His biggest success before xXx arrived in 2001 with The Fast and the Furious. Playing Dominic Toretto transformed Diesel into one of Hollywood's fastest rising action stars. His combination of confidence, quiet intensity, and natural screen presence made him an ideal choice for leading high-energy action films. When producers began developing xXx, they wanted to create a new franchise that could appeal to younger audiences looking for a more rebellious hero than the traditional secret agent. Diesel perfectly matched that vision. Rather than portraying a polished government operative, he created a character who remained authentic to his roots, questioning authority while using intelligence, athletic ability, and courage to complete dangerous missions. The success of xXx further established Diesel as one of the defining action stars of the decade. Although he later stepped away from the franchise before eventually returning many years later, the film reinforced his reputation as an actor capable of launching blockbuster franchises. It also strengthened the image that would define much of his later career. A physically imposing hero with a strong moral code, loyalty to friends, and the confidence to face overwhelming odds. Samuel L. Jackson played Augustus Gibbons, the experienced National Security Agency official responsible for recruiting Xander Cage. By the time xXx entered production, Jackson was already one of the most respected and recognizable actors in Hollywood. His career stretched back through decades of memorable performances in films such as Jungle Fever, Patriot Games, True Romance, and Jurassic Park. His international breakthrough came with Pulp Fiction, where his unforgettable portrayal of Jules Winfield earned widespread acclaim and an Academy Award nomination. Jackson had developed a remarkable reputation for bringing authority, humor, and intensity to nearly every role. Whether playing heroes, villains, mentors, or government officials, he possessed a commanding screen presence that instantly elevated any production. As Augustus Gibbons, he served as the bridge between the rebellious world of Xander Cage and the disciplined environment of American intelligence. His sharp dialogue, calm confidence, and occasional humor provided balance to Diesel's more impulsive character. Following xXx, Jackson continued one of the most successful careers in modern cinema. He became an essential part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Nick Fury, while continuing to appear in films across nearly every genre imaginable. Looking back, Augustus Gibbons remains one of the many memorable authority figures Jackson portrayed throughout his career, demonstrating once again his ability to make supporting characters feel just as important as the lead. Martin Chokas portrayed Yorgi, the film's primary antagonist and leader of the criminal organization known as Anarchy 99. Before appearing in xXx, the New Zealand actor had already built a respected career in television and film, particularly in his home country. International audiences had recently seen him in The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, where he played Celeborn, giving him exposure to one of cinema's biggest fantasy franchises. Chokas approached Yorgi with calm intelligence rather than exaggerated aggression. Instead of portraying a loud, constantly angry villain, he created someone who appeared confident, sophisticated, and dangerous because of his patience. This understated performance made Yorgi a believable opponent capable of matching Xander Cage intellectually as well as physically. After xXx, xXx continued building a career filled with memorable villainous and dramatic performances in films, including Kingdom of Heaven, The Equalizer, and several historical dramas, becoming known as one of Hollywood's dependable character actors. Asia Argento played Yelena, one of the film's most important characters. Initially introduced as someone connected to Yorgie's organization, Yelena gradually develops a trusting relationship with Xander Cage. Argento already possessed significant experience in European cinema before joining production. Coming from a famous Italian filmmaking family, she had earned praise for dramatic performances while also directing and writing projects of her own. When xXx premiered in 2002, it entered theaters during a period when the action genre was undergoing a significant transformation. Audiences had spent decades watching sophisticated spies in tailored suits, military commandos following strict orders, and highly trained professionals carrying out dangerous missions with polished precision. xXx deliberately challenged those conventions by presenting a hero who came from an entirely different world. Xander Cage was not a soldier, a police officer, or a career intelligence agent. Instead, he was an extreme sports celebrity who distrusted authority, embraced risk, and lived according to his own rules. This fresh approach reflected the attitudes of a younger generation and helped redefine what an action hero could look like in the early 21st century. The late 1990s and early 2000s saw the rapid growth of extreme sports around the world. Skateboarding, motocross, BMX riding, snowboarding, freestyle skiing, mountain biking, and base jumping were no longer considered niche hobbies. Television networks devoted programming to competitions. Athletes became international celebrities, and brands invested heavily in promoting adrenaline-fueled lifestyles. Events such as the X Games gained enormous popularity, inspiring millions of young viewers to admire athletes who pushed the limits of what seemed physically possible. xXx capitalized on this cultural movement by making extreme sports a foundation of its protagonist's identity rather than simply using them as visual spectacle. Xander Cage represented a new type of celebrity who existed outside traditional institutions. He gained fame through daring stunts, internet videos, and public notoriety instead of government service or military achievements. This concept felt remarkably modern, at a time when online media was beginning to reshape entertainment. The film anticipated the growing influence of internet personalities and independent creators who built audiences through bold content rather than conventional career paths. Although social media platforms had not yet become dominant, the character reflected ideas that would later define the digital age, where individuals could achieve worldwide recognition without relying on traditional gatekeepers. The movie also reflected changing attitudes toward authority following the end of the 20th century. Unlike earlier spy heroes who willingly accepted orders, Xander Cage questioned nearly every instruction he received. His rebellious personality resonated with younger audiences who often valued individuality, authenticity, and personal freedom over rigid institutions. Rather than becoming a government agent because of patriotism alone, he agreed to participate on his own terms. This independence became one of the defining characteristics of the franchise and distinguished it from other espionage films. Many viewers compared xXx to the James Bond series, but the differences were intentional and significant. Bond represented elegance, diplomacy, expensive technology, and refined sophistication. Xander Cage wore leather instead of tuxedos, drove modified performance vehicles instead of luxury sports cars, and relied on athletic improvisation as often as advanced gadgets. The film essentially asked what would happen if the world's greatest daredevil became a secret agent instead of a traditionally trained operative. This contrast attracted audiences looking for something different from the established formula, while still delivering spectacular action and globe-spanning adventures. The influence of xXx extended into fashion and youth culture. The clothing worn by Xander Cage reflected the popular styles of the early 2000s, including leather jackets, cargo pants, heavy boots, athletic gear, tattoos, chains, and bold accessories. His appearance embraced elements of skateboarding, motocross, rock music, and urban streetwear. Many younger fans viewed the character as someone who looked authentic rather than manufactured. He represented confidence without excessive polish, helping reinforce fashion trends already gaining popularity among teenagers and young adults. Music played an equally important role in the film's cultural identity. Instead of relying exclusively on traditional orchestral compositions, XXX incorporated rock, metal, electronic, and alternative music that appealed to contemporary audiences. The soundtrack complemented the film's energetic editing style and reinforced its rebellious tone. This musical direction reflected the tastes of many younger viewers and contributed to the movie's identity as a product of its era. The combination of fast-paced action and aggressive music became a recognizable formula that many later action films attempted to emulate. The film also demonstrated Hollywood's increasing interest in international storytelling. Rather than limiting the narrative to American locations, XXX traveled across multiple countries, introducing audiences to Eastern European settings that had rarely appeared in mainstream action blockbusters of the time. This global perspective reflected the increasingly international nature of cinema, where stories crossed national boundaries and appealed to worldwide audiences. The international cast further reinforced this approach, giving production a broader cultural identity than many comparable action films. Another important aspect of the movie's cultural impact involved its practical stunt work. While computer-generated effects were becoming more common in Hollywood, XXX emphasized real stunt performers, elaborate vehicle sequences, and physically demanding action scenes whenever possible. Extreme sports athletes participated in many of the production's most memorable moments, lending authenticity to sequences that might otherwise have relied entirely on digital effects. This commitment to practical action earned admiration from fans who appreciated seeing genuine physical performances on screen. The character of Xander Cage also influenced later action protagonists by demonstrating that heroes could possess unconventional backgrounds without sacrificing credibility. In the years following XXX, audiences increasingly embraced protagonists who were hackers, racers, athletes, criminals, or ordinary civilians forced into extraordinary situations. The film helped broaden expectations regarding who could realistically lead a major action franchise, encouraging studios to explore more diverse character concepts instead of relying solely on military or law enforcement backgrounds. The production of XXX was an ambitious undertaking that aimed to redefine the modern action film. Released in 2002, the movie combined extreme sports, espionage, and large-scale practical stunts into a single package that felt unlike anything audiences had seen before. While the finished film appeared effortless in its fast-paced presentation, bringing that vision to life required years of planning, international coordination, technical innovation, and the dedication of hundreds of cast and crew members. Every major sequence presented unique challenges, and many of the film's most memorable moments were achieved through practical filmmaking rather than relying entirely on computer-generated effects. The project was directed by Rob Cohen, who had already established himself as one of Hollywood's leading action directors. Before XXX, Cohen had directed films such as Dragon, The Bruce Lee Story, Daylight, and most importantly, The Fast and the Furious. That 2001 blockbuster had transformed Vin Diesel into an international action star while demonstrating Cohen's ability to combine spectacular vehicle action with charismatic characters. Recognizing their successful partnership, the filmmakers reunited Diesel and Cohen for XXX with the goal of creating an entirely new franchise that could stand alongside the biggest action series of its era. Cohen wanted to move away from traditional spy movies. Instead of elegant casinos, luxury hotels, and carefully planned espionage operations, he envisioned a world filled with adrenaline, extreme athletes, underground culture, and dangerous stunts. His approach emphasized speed and physicality above elegance. Every creative decision, from costume design to cinematography, reflected that philosophy. Rather than making Xander Cage feel like a trained government agent, Cohen ensured that he remained an outsider throughout the story, even after joining the mission. One of the earliest production decisions involved casting Vin Diesel. Following the enormous success of The Fast and the Furious, Diesel had become one of Hollywood's fastest rising stars. The filmmakers believed he possessed the physical presence, confidence, and charisma needed to carry a new franchise. Unlike many action heroes before him, Diesel projected strength without relying on sophisticated manners or polished dialogue. His natural intensity perfectly matched the rebellious personality of Xander Cage. Diesel was deeply involved in developing the character. He wanted Cage to feel authentic rather than simply becoming another version of an existing secret agent. Instead of portraying someone who immediately accepted military discipline, Diesel emphasized Cage's independence and distrust of authority. This creative direction influenced numerous scenes throughout the film, helping establish the character's unique personality. One of the production's defining goals was minimizing the use of digital effects whenever practical alternatives existed. While computer-generated imagery was becoming increasingly common in Hollywood during the early 2000s, Rob Cohen believed audiences would respond more strongly to genuine physical stunts. As a result, the filmmakers hired experienced stunt coordinators alongside world-class extreme sports athletes capable of performing many of the dangerous sequences. Several professional motocross riders, snowboarders, skateboarders, and stunt specialists contributed to the action scenes. Their expertise allowed the production to capture movements that would have been extremely difficult to fake convincingly using visual effects alone. The authenticity of these performances became one of the movie's greatest strengths, giving many action scenes a raw energy that audiences immediately recognized. The opening sequence established the film's identity almost immediately. Xander Cage's daring stunt involving a speeding sports car, a bridge, and a parachute required extensive planning and multiple camera setups. Safety teams carefully calculated every aspect of the jump, ensuring that the stunt could be performed without compromising realism. Although some visual effects were used to enhance the sequence, much of the excitement came from genuine stunt work performed under controlled conditions. The film was shot across several international locations, with much of production taking place in the Czech Republic. Prague became one of the movie's most important filming locations because its historic architecture, narrow streets, industrial districts, and European atmosphere perfectly matched the fictional environment required for the story. The city had already become increasingly popular among Hollywood productions due to its versatility and experienced local film crews. Filming in Prague offered numerous advantages. The city's blend of medieval buildings, modern infrastructure, and abandoned industrial sites allowed the production designers to create believable environments for Anarchy 99's operations. Many exterior scenes were filmed on location rather than inside studios, adding realism and visual variety throughout the movie. One of the most technically demanding sequences involved the avalanche chase. The filmmakers wanted audiences to experience the sensation of racing downhill ahead of an enormous wall of snow. Creating this illusion required combining practical snow photography, specially designed stunt work, miniature effects, and carefully integrated visual effects. Snowboarding professionals performed many of the dangerous downhill movements, while additional shots were created using controlled environments to safely capture close-up action. Although the finished scene lasts only a few minutes, it required weeks of preparation and multiple filming techniques. Weather conditions constantly affected production schedules, forcing the crew to remain flexible while waiting for suitable filming opportunities. This patience ultimately paid off, as the avalanche sequence became one of the movie's signature moments. The underwater sequences presented an entirely different set of challenges. Working underwater always increases production complexity because communication becomes more difficult, equipment must be specially protected, and performers require extensive safety training. Divers, medical personnel, and technical specialists remained present throughout filming to ensure every underwater scene could be completed safely. Vehicle action represented another major component of the production. High-speed chases involving sports cars, motorcycles, and armored vehicles required roads to be closed, specialized camera rigs installed, and countless rehearsals completed before filming could begin. Precision driving teams coordinated every movement to ensure collisions appeared dangerous, while remaining carefully controlled behind the scenes. Rob Cohen frequently used multiple cameras simultaneously during action scenes. Capturing explosions, crashes, and practical stunts from several angles reduced the need for repeated takes involving expensive destruction. This approach also provided editors with greater flexibility when assembling the movie's fast-paced action sequences. Samuel L. Jackson brought valuable experience to the production. By this point in his career, he had appeared in numerous major films and was known for his professionalism on set. Crew members often praised his ability to memorize dialogue quickly while maintaining a relaxed atmosphere between takes. His scenes with Vin Diesel helped establish the relationship between Augustus Gibbons and Xander Cage, balancing authority with mutual respect. Martin Chokas approached the role of Yorgi differently from many traditional action villains. Rather than portraying constant rage or exaggerated aggression, he focused on creating an intelligent and composed antagonist. Rob Cohen encouraged his restrained performance because he believed genuine confidence made villains more intimidating than excessive shouting or dramatic behavior. Asia Argento also contributed significantly to the international atmosphere of production. Having already established herself in European cinema, she brought a different acting style that complemented the film's multinational cast. Her chemistry with Diesel developed naturally during filming, helping strengthen the relationship between Xander Cage and Yelena. Like many large-scale action productions, XXX experienced occasional injuries among stunt performers despite extensive safety precautions. Performing motorcycle jumps, explosion falls, and high-speed driving inevitably carried risks. Fortunately, detailed planning and experienced coordinators minimized serious accidents throughout production. Every dangerous stunt involved multiple rehearsals before cameras rolled. The production design team carefully created the headquarters of Anarchy 99, blending industrial architecture with military equipment and nightclub aesthetics. This visual style reinforced the organization's identity as both a criminal network and a revolutionary movement. Rather than building generic villain headquarters, the designers wanted every location to reflect Yorgi's personality and philosophy. Editing the film became one of the most important stages of production. With hundreds of hours of footage captured from multiple cameras, the editors worked closely with Rob Cohen to maintain relentless pacing without sacrificing narrative clarity. Quick cuts, dynamic transitions, and carefully timed music helped create the energetic rhythm that became one of XXX's defining characteristics. Looking back, the making of XXX demonstrated what could be achieved through practical filmmaking, international collaboration, and ambitious creative vision. The production combined talented actors, experienced stunt professionals, innovative technical crews, and a director determined to push action cinema in a new direction. More than 20 years later, many behind-the-scenes achievements remain just as impressive as the finished film itself, serving as a reminder of the extraordinary effort required to create one of the most memorable action spectacles of the early 21st century. At its core, XXX is an action-adventure that blends espionage, extreme sports, and modern thriller elements into a story about an unlikely hero who must adapt to a world he neither trusts nor respects. Rather than following the traditional formula of a highly trained government operative completing a dangerous mission, the film deliberately places an outsider at the center of the narrative. Xander Cage is not chosen because of military discipline or intelligence training. He is recruited because he thinks differently from conventional agents, making him capable of surviving situations that have already claimed the lives of professionals. This unusual premise gives the film its distinctive identity, while allowing the story to explore themes of individuality, trust, and unconventional heroism. The narrative follows a classic three-act structure, but each act is built around increasingly ambitious action sequences that also serve to develop the characters and move the story forward. Every major stunt, chase, or confrontation reveals new information rather than existing purely for spectacle. Although the movie emphasizes excitement and entertainment, its structure remains carefully organized, gradually increasing the stakes until the explosive finale. The opening sequence immediately establishes the tone of the film. Instead of introducing the main hero, the story begins with a covert government operation involving a professional secret agent. This experienced operative attempts to infiltrate a dangerous criminal organization known as Anarchy 99. The mission quickly fails, ending in disaster when the agent is exposed and killed. This opening accomplishes several important narrative objectives. First, it demonstrates that the villains are intelligent and extremely dangerous. Second, it shows that traditional espionage methods are ineffective against this new enemy. Finally, it creates the central problem that drives the remainder of the story. The government needs someone completely different to succeed where trained professionals have failed. The film then shifts dramatically in tone by introducing Xander Cage in one of the movie's most memorable opening scenes. Cage is shown performing a spectacular stunt involving a stolen sports car, a bridge, and a parachute while simultaneously exposing a corrupt politician. This introduction immediately defines his personality. He enjoys danger, rejects authority, possesses exceptional athletic ability, and uses his popularity to challenge powerful individuals whom he believes deserve public embarrassment. Unlike many action heroes who are introduced through combat or military operations, Cage enters the story through an act of rebellion mixed with entertainment. This introduction serves as the first major turning point because it attracts the attention of Augustus Gibbons, a senior National Security Agency official. Gibbons recognizes qualities in Cage that conventional agents lack. Rather than seeing him as a criminal, Gibbons views him as a valuable asset capable of adapting to unpredictable situations. Their first meetings establish one of the film's central relationships. Cage initially resists government control, while Gibbons gradually earns his respect by acknowledging his unique abilities instead of trying to completely change his personality. Before offering Cage the real mission, Gibbons subjects him to a series of unconventional tests. These sequences function as the story's first major character development phase. Rather than evaluating physical strength alone, the tests measure Cage's intelligence, creativity, courage, and ability to react under pressure. He repeatedly refuses to behave according to expectations, finding original solutions instead of following instructions. These scenes reinforce the film's central message that unconventional thinking can sometimes outperform rigid training. Once Cage accepts the assignment, the narrative enters its second act as he travels to Eastern Europe to investigate Anarchy 99. This section of the film slows the pace slightly compared to the explosive opening, allowing audiences to become familiar with the villains, supporting characters, and international setting. The investigation introduces Yorgi, the charismatic leader of Anarchy 99, whose calm confidence immediately establishes him as a formidable opponent. Unlike many action villains who rely solely on intimidation, Yorgi presents himself as intelligent, sophisticated, and patient. His organization appears disciplined rather than chaotic, making them more believable as a global threat. At the same time, Cage meets Yelena, who initially appears to be closely associated with Yorgi. Their relationship develops gradually through shared experiences rather than immediate romance. The screenplay carefully avoids revealing all of Yelena's motivations at once, creating uncertainty regarding her loyalty. This narrative ambiguity encourages viewers to question whether she is genuinely helping Cage or secretly manipulating him on behalf of Anarchy 99. As Cage infiltrates the organization, the story continually alternates between investigation and action. Each mission uncovers another layer of the conspiracy while presenting increasingly dangerous challenges. Instead of simply gathering information through conversations, Cage often learns critical details during motorcycle chases, nightclub confrontations, firefights, and daring escapes. This approach maintains the film's energetic pacing by ensuring exposition rarely interrupts the momentum. The midpoint of the story significantly raises the stakes when Cage discovers the true objective of Anarchy 99. What initially appears to be an ordinary criminal enterprise is revealed to involve a devastating biological weapon capable of causing mass casualties. This revelation transforms the narrative from a relatively contained espionage mission into a race against time with potentially global consequences. The audience now understands that failure would affect far more than the lives of the main characters. Following this discovery, the film enters its most suspenseful phase. Cage becomes increasingly isolated as both the villains and his government allies question his actions. This temporary loss of trust creates dramatic tension because the protagonist must continue pursuing the mission while lacking complete support from either side. The screenplay uses this period to demonstrate Cage's independence. He continues acting according to his own moral judgment rather than waiting for official approval. The relationship between Cage and Yelena also reaches an important turning point during this section. As both characters reveal more about themselves, mutual trust gradually replaces suspicion. Their partnership evolves beyond simple cooperation, adding emotional depth to a story otherwise dominated by action. Although romance remains a secondary element, it provides additional motivation for both characters as the danger intensifies. The third act begins once the villains launch the final stage of their plan. The pace accelerates dramatically as multiple action sequences unfold in rapid succession. Time becomes a primary enemy, forcing Cage to rely on every skill demonstrated earlier in the film. His experience with extreme sports, fearless decision-making, and willingness to improvise all become essential during the climax. Rather than suddenly acquiring new abilities, Cage succeeds by applying the talents that defined his character from the beginning. One of the screenplay's greatest strengths is its use of environmental obstacles during the finale. High-speed vehicles, collapsing structures, water, explosions, and complex machinery all become active components of the action rather than simply serving as background scenery. Every challenge requires quick thinking instead of relying solely on physical strength, reinforcing the film's emphasis on creativity under pressure. The climax successfully combines several narrative threads established throughout the story. Cage confronts Yorgi directly, completes the mission he originally resisted accepting, earns the respect of Gibbons and the intelligence community, and fully embraces his role as an unconventional protector without abandoning his independent personality. Importantly, the ending does not transform him into a traditional government agent. Instead, it suggests that his value lies precisely in remaining different from everyone else. The resolution provides satisfying closure while leaving room for future adventures. The immediate global threat has been eliminated. The central relationships have evolved naturally, and Cage has proven that unconventional methods can succeed where traditional approaches fail. At the same time, his personality remains unchanged. He is still rebellious, confident, and adventurous, ensuring that audiences leave the film with the same charismatic hero they admire at the beginning, only now possessing greater purpose and experience. From a structural perspective, XXX balances exposition, character development, humor, suspense, and large-scale action remarkably well. Every act raises the stakes, every major sequence contributes to the overall narrative, and each turning point naturally leads to the next. While the film proudly embraces spectacular entertainment, its carefully organized storytelling ensures that the audience remains emotionally invested throughout the journey. The result is a fast-moving adventure whose narrative structure supports its action rather than being overshadowed by it, making XXX one of the most distinctive action films of the early 21st century. Although XXX is remembered primarily for its explosive action sequences, spectacular stunts, and adrenaline-fueled pace, the film contains several underlying themes that give the story greater depth than its surface suggests. Beneath the motorcycle chases, explosion, and spy missions is a narrative that explores identity, individuality, trust, freedom, loyalty, sacrifice, and the conflict between authority and independence. Rather than presenting these ideas through lengthy speeches or philosophical discussions, the movie communicates them through the actions, choices, and relationships of its characters. This approach allows the themes to develop naturally while maintaining the fast-moving energy expected from an action blockbuster. Perhaps the most important theme throughout XXX is the celebration of individuality. From the opening moment of the film, Xander Cage is established as someone who refuses to conform to society's expectations. He does not wear expensive suits, follow strict rules, or seek approval from powerful institutions. Instead, he defines himself through his own actions, values, and personal code of ethics. His identity is built around authenticity rather than appearance. This makes him fundamentally different from the traditional action heroes who often represent established systems of authority. The film repeatedly argues that individuality should not be viewed as weakness or irresponsibility. Instead, it presents independent thinking as one of humanity's greatest strengths. The government recruits Cage not despite his unconventional behavior, but because of it. Every professional agent who approached the mission using standard methods failed. Cage succeeds because he refuses to think like everyone else. His willingness to improvise becomes his greatest weapon, reinforcing the idea that creativity often solves problems more effectively than rigid obedience. Closely connected to individuality is the theme of rebellion against authority. Throughout the story, Cage constantly questions orders, challenges assumptions, and resists being controlled. Importantly, however, the film does not portray rebellion as simple defiance for its own sake. Cage does not reject authority because he enjoys creating chaos. Instead, he challenges institutions when he believes they have become disconnected from reality or incapable of adapting to changing circumstances. This distinction gives the character moral complexity. He is not anti-government, nor is he blindly patriotic. Instead, he evaluates situations according to his own principles before deciding whether authority deserves his cooperation. By the conclusion of the story, the government has also evolved. Augustus Gibbons learns that unconventional individuals can become valuable allies without completely abandoning their identities. The relationship between Cage and Gibbons ultimately symbolizes cooperation between freedom and responsibility rather than victory for one side over the other. Another central theme is trust. Almost every important relationship in the film begins with suspicion. Gibbons does not fully trust Cage because of his criminal history and rebellious personality. Cage does not trust Gibbons because he represents government authority. Yelena initially appears loyal to Yorgi while secretly questioning her circumstances. Even the villains distrust outsiders, constantly testing Cage's loyalty before accepting him into their organization. As the narrative progresses, trust becomes something that must be earned through actions rather than words. Cage proves himself repeatedly by risking his own safety to protect others. Gibbons gradually allows Cage greater independence because he recognizes his judgment. Yelena chooses honesty over fear despite the enormous personal risks involved. The film suggests that genuine trust develops slowly through consistent behavior instead of promises or appearances. Loyalty serves as another major theme, but the film carefully distinguishes between loyalty to people and loyalty to principles. Several characters initially remain loyal to organizations that no longer deserve their commitment. Members of Anarchy 99 blindly follow Yorgi despite the catastrophic consequences of his plans. Their loyalty becomes destructive because it ignores morality. In contrast, Cage demonstrates loyalty to individuals he believes are worth protecting rather than to institutions demanding unquestioning obedience. This difference becomes increasingly important as the story unfolds. The audience sees that loyalty without conscience can become dangerous, while loyalty guided by personal ethics leads to courage and sacrifice. Cage repeatedly risks his own life not because someone orders him to do so, but because he believes protecting innocent people is simply the right thing to do. Freedom is another recurring idea woven throughout the narrative. Cage begins the story living an unrestricted lifestyle, traveling freely, performing dangerous stunts, and refusing conventional responsibilities. Ironically, accepting the government mission appears to threaten that freedom. However, the film gradually reveals that true freedom does not mean avoiding responsibility altogether. Instead, it means retaining the ability to make independent choices even while serving a greater purpose. Yelena represents another perspective on freedom. Unlike Cage, she lives under constant surveillance and control within Anarchy 99. Her gradual decision to help Cage symbolizes her desire to reclaim personal independence after years of manipulation. While Cage learns that freedom includes responsibility, Yelena learns that responsibility can lead to genuine freedom. Their parallel journeys strengthen one another emotionally while reinforcing the film's central message. The conflict between appearance and reality also plays an important symbolic role. Throughout the story, almost nothing is exactly what it seems. Xander Cage initially appears to be an irresponsible thrill seeker, but proves capable of extraordinary courage and intelligence. Yelena seems completely loyal to Yorgi, while secretly questioning his methods. Yorgi presents himself as a sophisticated revolutionary, while concealing his willingness to commit mass murder. Even the government's recruitment process disguises its true intentions through elaborate psychological tests. Water appears repeatedly as another subtle symbol. Several important scenes involve rivers, oceans, underwater environments, or rainfall. Traditionally, water often symbolizes transformation, uncertainty, or renewal. In xXx, underwater sequences frequently coincide with moments of discovery or transition. They mark stages where characters leave one phase of the story behind before entering another. The constant movement of water also reflects the unpredictable nature of espionage, where situations change rapidly and stability rarely lasts. Vehicles carry symbolic significance as well. Cars, motorcycles, boats, and aircraft represent more than transportation. They function as extensions of the characters themselves. Cage's vehicles emphasize speed, freedom, and individuality. Government vehicles often symbolize structure and authority. Meanwhile, Anarchy 99's military equipment represents power used for domination rather than liberation. Every chase, therefore, becomes not only a physical confrontation, but also a symbolic clash between competing philosophies. Technology presents another interesting thematic contrast. Throughout the movie, advanced gadgets assist the characters, but technology alone never determines success. Highly sophisticated equipment repeatedly fails when operated without creativity or courage. Conversely, Cage often succeeds because he combines technology with instinct, adaptability, and human judgment. The film suggests that innovation remains valuable only when guided by people capable of thinking independently. Even the villainous organization, Anarchy 99, possesses symbolic meaning. The group's name reflects the danger of pursuing absolute freedom without ethical responsibility. while Cage represents independent thought balanced by compassion. Anarchy 99 embraces destruction disguised as liberation. This contrast highlights one of the film's most important moral ideas. Freedom without conscience becomes chaos, while freedom guided by integrity becomes heroism. By the conclusion of the story, these themes come together through Xander Cage's transformation. He remains the same fearless individual introduced at the beginning, yet his understanding of responsibility, trust, and loyalty has evolved considerably. He does not abandon his rebellious identity, nor does he become a conventional government operative. Instead, he discovers that individuality and service can coexist without compromising personal integrity. That balance ultimately becomes the heart of xXx, elevating it beyond a simple action spectacle into a story about finding purpose without losing oneself. While audiences often remember xXx for its thrilling stunts and explosive action, its enduring appeal also comes from these deeper themes. The film celebrates authenticity over conformity, courage over fear, independent thinking over blind obedience, and personal responsibility over selfish freedom. These universal ideas continue to resonate with viewers, helping explain why the story remains relevant and entertaining more than 2 decades after its original release. One of the defining characteristics of xXx is its bold visual identity. From its opening moments, the film establishes that it is not attempting to imitate the elegant appearance of classic espionage movies. Instead, it embraces a raw, energetic, and aggressive style that reflects the personality of its main character. Every visual decision, from the lighting and camera movement to the color palette and editing, supports the film's central idea that Xander Cage is an unconventional hero operating in an unconventional world. The cinematography does more than simply record action. It actively shapes the audience's experience, placing viewers in the middle of dangerous stunts, high-speed chases, and explosive confrontations. Director Rob Cohen and cinematographer Dean Semler worked together to create a visual language that balanced realism with larger-than-life spectacle. Dean Semler was already one of Hollywood's most respected cinematographers, having worked on films such as Mad Max 2, Dances with Wolves, Waterworld, and The Patriot. His experience photographing both intimate character moments and massive action sequences made him an ideal choice for a production that demanded constant visual variety. Rather than relying on a single style throughout the movie, Semler adapted his approach depending on the emotional purpose of each scene. One of the film's most recognizable visual features is its constant sense of movement. The camera is rarely completely still for long periods. Instead, it tracks alongside motorcycles, follows characters through crowded environments, sweeps across rooftops, and dives into action sequences with remarkable energy. This kinetic style mirrors Xander Cage's personality. Just as the protagonist is always moving, improvising, and reacting, the camera itself seems unwilling to remain static. The result is a viewing experience that feels fast, exciting, and physically engaging. Handheld camera work is used selectively throughout the film to increase immediacy. During tense infiltrations or moments of uncertainty, slight camera instability gives the impression that the audience is experiencing events alongside the characters rather than observing from a comfortable distance. This technique enhances realism without becoming distracting. In contrast, wider and smoother camera movements are often reserved for establishing shots or major action set pieces, allowing viewers to fully appreciate the scale of the environments. The opening sequence immediately demonstrates the movie's visual philosophy. Xander Cage's bridge stunt is photographed using a combination of wide landscape shots, close-up reactions, aerial perspectives, and moving vehicle cameras. These constantly changing viewpoints communicate both the enormous scale of the stunt and the danger involved. Instead of relying exclusively on rapid editing, the filmmakers frequently allow wider shots to continue long enough for audiences to understand that genuine stunt work is taking place. This creates a stronger sense of authenticity than will be achieved through excessive cutting. Color plays an important role in establishing the mood of different locations. Much of the film uses cool blue, gray, and metallic tones that emphasize industrial environments, urban landscapes, and the cold atmosphere of Eastern Europe. These cooler colors create a visual contrast with the warmer environments associated with Xander Cage's earlier life in the United States. The difference subtly reinforces the idea that Cage has entered an unfamiliar world where the rules are completely different from those he previously knew. Night scenes dominate much of the film, allowing lighting to become one of its strongest visual tools. Streets illuminated by neon signs, industrial floodlights, headlights, explosions, and reflections create layered compositions filled with texture. Instead of brightly lighting every location, the filmmakers frequently embrace shadows and darkness, making dangerous environments feel unpredictable. Faces are sometimes partially illuminated, emphasizing mystery while allowing characters to appear both threatening and intriguing. The use of practical lighting contributes significantly to the film's realism. Rather than hiding visible light sources, many scenes are illuminated by lamps, vehicle headlights, fires, electronic displays, or natural moonlight. This approach grounds even the most spectacular action sequences in believable environments. It also enhances the gritty atmosphere that separates XXX from the cleaner visual style often associated with traditional spy films. Framing also reflects the personalities of the characters. Xander Cage is frequently photographed using low-angle shots that make him appear powerful, confident, and physically dominant. These compositions reinforce his status as the central hero, without requiring unnecessary dialogue. During action scenes, he often occupies the center of the frame, emphasizing that the audience should experience events through his perspective. Augustus Gibbons, by contrast, is often framed within offices, vehicles, or command centers filled with structured lines and organized spaces. This visual organization mirrors his disciplined personality and professional background. Even before speaking, the composition communicates that Gibbons represents order and institutional authority. Yorgi's visual presentation differs considerably. He is frequently shown within luxurious interiors, elevated positions, or symmetrical compositions that emphasize control. His calm demeanor is supported by balanced framing, making him appear composed even while discussing violent plans. Unlike Cage, whose scenes are filled with movement, Yorgi often remains physically still. This contrast creates psychological tension because the hero's energy opposes the villain's calculated patience. The film makes extensive use of wide-angle lenses during action scenes involving vehicles and extreme sports. These lenses exaggerate speed and increase the apparent distance between objects, making jumps, turns, and near collisions appear even more dramatic. Motorcycle chases become especially immersive because the audience feels positioned directly alongside the riders. At the same time, telephoto lenses are occasionally used during surveillance sequences, compressing distance and reinforcing the feeling that characters are constantly being observed. The production also benefits from its impressive use of real locations. Prague provides an extraordinary visual backdrop thanks to its mixture of historic architecture, narrow streets, bridges, industrial facilities, and modern urban spaces. Rather than constructing every environment inside studios, the filmmakers integrated practical locations into the story whenever possible. This decision gives a movie a sense of authenticity that would have been difficult to recreate entirely through set construction. Production design works hand in hand with cinematography. The headquarters of Anarchy 99 combines industrial metal surfaces, concrete structures, military equipment, and nightclub aesthetics into a unique visual environment. Every location reflects the organization's philosophy of controlled chaos. The combination of luxury and brutality creates spaces that feel both attractive and threatening at the same time. Explosions and fire are used not only as action elements, but also as visual motifs. Bright orange flames repeatedly interrupt the movie's predominantly cool color palette, symbolizing moments when carefully controlled situations suddenly descend into chaos. These bursts of warm color naturally draw the viewer's attention, while increasing dramatic intensity. Special effects are integrated carefully with practical photography. Although digital effects were available, the filmmakers chose whenever possible to combine real explosions, practical vehicle stunts, and physical performances with visual enhancements rather than replacing them entirely. This decision gives the action greater weight because audiences instinctively recognize the difference between genuine physical movement and purely digital imagery. Many of the movie's most memorable sequences remain convincing today because they were built around authentic stunt work. Editing also contributes heavily to the film's visual rhythm. Quick cuts dominate chase scenes and combat, creating excitement without completely sacrificing spatial awareness. Importantly, the editors usually establish geography before accelerating the pace. Viewers understand where characters are located before the action becomes more complex. This clarity prevents the movie from becoming visually confusing despite its energetic style. Slow motion photography appears at carefully selected moments to emphasize particularly dangerous stunts or emotionally significant actions, rather than overusing the technique. The filmmakers reserve it for moments where audiences benefit from appreciating the precision or scale of particular movement. These brief pauses within otherwise rapid sequences create contrast that actually increases the perceived intensity of the surrounding action. Costume design further reinforces the visual identity of the film. Xander Cage's leather jackets, tattoos, combat boots, and practical clothing distinguish him immediately from the suits worn by government officials. His appearance communicates rebellion without requiring explanation. Similarly, Yelena's wardrobe gradually evolves throughout the story, subtly reflecting her emotional journey and changing loyalties. Even secondary characters are visually designed to reflect their personalities, professions, and allegiances. Ultimately, the cinematography of xXx succeeds because every visual decision serves the story. The moving camera reflects the restless nature of its protagonist. The cool color palette creates an atmosphere of danger and uncertainty. Practical locations provide authenticity, while dynamic framing strengthens character relationships and emotional impact. Rather than simply presenting action, the film uses cinematography to immerse audiences inside the experience, making every chase, explosion, and confrontation feel immediate and personal. More than 2 decades after its release, xXx remains a striking example of how visual style can become an essential part of a film's identity, helping transform a straightforward action story into an unforgettable cinematic spectacle. One of the most important elements that gives xXx its unique personality is its soundtrack and sound design. While audiences often remember the spectacular stunts, explosive action, and charismatic performances, much of the film's energy comes from the way music and sound work together to create excitement, tension, and emotion. Every motorcycle engine, explosion, gunshot, musical cue, and moment of silence contributes to the overall experience. Rather than simply accompanying the visuals, the audio becomes an active storytelling tool that reinforces the rebellious attitude of Xander Cage while helping establish the movie as one of the defining action films of the early 2000s. Unlike many earlier spy films that relied heavily on orchestral music inspired by classic espionage adventures, xXx embraced a modern musical identity. The filmmakers deliberately chose a soundtrack filled with rock, heavy metal, alternative rock, electronic music, industrial influences, and contemporary hip-hop. This decision immediately separated the film from more traditional action movies and reflected the culture surrounding extreme sports, skateboarding, motocross, and underground music scenes. The soundtrack was designed not only to entertain, but also to communicate who Xander Cage was before he ever spoke a line of dialogue. The musical score was composed by Randy Edelman, a veteran composer known for creating memorable themes for adventure, drama, and action films. Before working on xXx, Edelman had composed music for movies such as Dragonheart, Gettysburg, Kindergarten Cop, The Mask, and Anaconda. His experience allowed him to combine traditional orchestral techniques with modern rhythms and electronic textures, producing a score that fit perfectly alongside the licensed songs featured throughout the movie. Rather than competing with the popular music, Edelman's score acts as the emotional backbone of the film. During quieter scenes, it subtly reinforces suspense, curiosity, or emotional connection without overwhelming the dialogue. During larger action sequences, orchestral elements blend with percussion and electronic sounds to create momentum that keeps the audience emotionally engaged. This balance allows the film to transition naturally between character moments and explosive action without feeling disconnected. The licensed soundtrack became one of the movie's defining features. At the beginning of the 2000s, soundtrack albums often played an important role in marketing blockbuster films, and xXx fully embraced that trend. The soundtrack featured artists representing the aggressive, energetic music that was extremely popular among younger audiences at the time. Heavy guitar riffs, powerful drum rhythms, electronic beats, and energetic vocals reflected the same fearless attitude that defined Xander Cage himself. Many of the songs chosen for the film belonged to genres that were closely associated with skateboarding videos, motocross events, snowboarding competitions, and action sports broadcasts. This connection strengthened the authenticity of Cage's world. Rather than feeling like a government spy who occasionally performed stunts, he genuinely appeared to come from the extreme sports community because the music surrounding him matched that lifestyle. One of the soundtrack's greatest strengths is how carefully songs are positioned within the narrative. Music rarely plays randomly. Instead, every major cue supports the emotional purpose of a particular scene. During the opening stunt sequence, energetic rock music immediately establishes the film's rebellious tone. Before viewers fully understand the story, they already understand the personality of its hero simply through the combination of visuals and music. The soundtrack tells the audience that this is not a conventional espionage film, but an adrenaline-filled adventure centered around speed, danger, and individuality. Action scenes benefit enormously from rhythmic editing synchronized with the music. Motorcycle chases, vehicle pursuits, and combat sequences often follow the tempo of the soundtrack, creating an almost musical flow between movement and sound. Explosions frequently coincide with powerful beats, while moment acceleration match increasing musical intensity. This synchronization creates excitement without requiring constant dialogue, allowing audiences to feel the momentum rather than simply observe it. The contrast between loud and quiet moments also deserves attention. Effective action films understand that constant noise eventually loses its impact. XXX therefore uses quieter scenes strategically to allow tension to build before unleashing another burst of sound. Conversations between Cage and Yelena, secret meetings, surveillance sequences, and moment of investigation often feature restrained musical accompaniment or complete silence. These quieter passages provide emotional breathing room while making the following action sequences feel even more powerful. Sound effects throughout the movie are carefully designed to emphasize realism despite the film's exaggerated action. Every vehicle possesses its own distinctive audio identity. Motorcycles produce aggressive engine notes that communicate speed and raw mechanical power. Sports cars roar with deep, powerful acceleration. Boats, helicopters, and aircraft each generate recognizable sounds that help orient the audience during complex action scenes. Weapon sound design follows a similar philosophy. Firearms are given heavy, impactful audio that reinforces their destructive power without becoming excessively exaggerated. Instead of sounding artificial, gunfire feels grounded and dangerous. Explosions combine deep bass frequencies with sharp, high-frequency debris, creating a physical sensation that audiences experience almost as much as they hear. This layered approach increases immersion by making every major action sequence feel substantial. Environmental sound also plays a surprisingly important role. Wind rushing past during high-speed stunts, water splashing during underwater scenes, echoing footsteps inside industrial buildings, distant machinery, and city ambience all contribute to believable environments. These background sounds may not attract conscious attention, but together they create a convincing world that feels alive beyond the immediate action. One particularly impressive aspect of the sound design involves the avalanche sequence. Rather than relying solely on music, the filmmakers allow natural sound effects to dominate key moments. The growing roar of collapsing snow gradually increases in volume, creating overwhelming pressure before viewers even see the full danger approaching. Snow scraping across rocks, boards cutting through ice, and heavy impacts combine to generate suspense that music alone could never achieve. When orchestral elements eventually join the sequence, they amplify emotions already established by realistic environmental sound. Dialogue mixing is another strength of the production. Despite the loud soundtrack and constant action, important conversations remain clear and understandable. Vin Diesel's naturally deep voice is given sufficient presence within the mix, allowing Xander Cage's confident personality to remain intact even during noisy environments. Samuel L. Jackson's sharp delivery receives similar attention, ensuring his dialogue retains authority regardless of surrounding sound effects. Silence is perhaps the film's most underrated audio technique. Several scenes intentionally reduce background music and environmental noise immediately before major events occur. These brief moments of near silence create anticipation because audiences instinctively expect something significant to happen. When explosions, crashes, or gunfire suddenly interrupt that silence, the emotional impact becomes considerably stronger. This careful manipulation of volume demonstrates sophisticated sound editing rather than relying exclusively on constant intensity. The soundtrack also reflects the personalities of different characters. Cage is surrounded by aggressive contemporary music, representing rebellion and freedom. Government environments tend to feature more restrained orchestral scoring, emphasizing discipline and professionalism. Yorgi's scenes frequently contain darker musical textures that create unease without revealing too much about his plans. These subtle differences help audiences recognize emotional shifts even before characters begin speaking. Another notable achievement is the integration of practical sound with visual effects. Since many of the movie stunts were performed physically rather than digitally, the sound team had authentic recordings of engines, impacts, explosions, and environmental effects to build upon. Instead of inventing entirely artificial audio, they enhanced genuine recordings with additional layers to increase dramatic impact while preserving realism. The film's closing moments demonstrate how music can influence emotional resolution. Rather than ending with purely triumphant orchestral celebration, the soundtrack maintains the energetic personality established at the beginning. This reminds audiences that although Xander Cage has completed his mission, he remains fundamentally the same independent individual introduced during the opening scene. The music reinforces that his identity has evolved without being replaced. Looking back more than 20 years later, the soundtrack of xXx serves as an excellent time capsule of early 2000s popular culture. The combination of rock, metal, electronic music, orchestral scoring, and aggressive sound design perfectly captures the era's fascination with extreme sports, high-energy entertainment, and rebellious youth culture. While musical tastes have naturally evolved, the soundtrack continues to feel authentic because it fully embraced the cultural moment in which the film was created. Ultimately, the audio design of xXx accomplishes far more than simply supporting the visuals. It defines character, shapes emotion, increases suspense, reinforces action, and establishes the film's unmistakable identity. The powerful combination of Randy Edelman's score, carefully selected contemporary songs, immersive environmental sound, expertly mixed dialogue, and impactful practical effects transforms every sequence into a fully immersive experience. Together, these elements ensure that xXx is remembered not only for what audiences saw on screen, but also for the unforgettable sounds that accompanied every jump, chase, explosion, and victory. When xXx was released in August 2002, it immediately attracted attention as one of the year's biggest action films. Coming only a year after the enormous success of The Fast and the Furious, the movie reunited director Rob Cohen and star Vin Diesel, creating high expectations among audiences. The marketing campaign presented xXx as a completely new type of spy adventure, replacing the sophisticated secret agents that had dominated the genre for decades with a fearless extreme sports athlete who relied on instinct, courage, and creativity rather than traditional espionage training. While critics and audiences did not always agree on the film's quality, there was little disagreement that xXx offered a fresh and energetic approach to action cinema. Commercially, the movie proved to be a significant success. Produced with a substantial budget that reflected its ambitious action sequences and international production, xXx earned hundreds of millions of dollars worldwide during its theatrical run. It performed particularly well among younger moviegoers, who were drawn to its combination of spectacular stunts, modern music, fast pacing, and Vin Diesel's charismatic performance. The strong box office results demonstrated that audiences were eager for an action hero who felt different from the polished government agents that had traditionally dominated spy films. The financial success also confirmed Vin Diesel's growing status as one of Hollywood's leading action stars. Before xXx, he had already gained international recognition through Pitch Black, Saving Private Ryan, and especially The Fast and the Furious. However, xXx was important because it proved that Diesel could headline another major franchise outside the world of street racing. The movie reinforced his ability to attract audiences through his distinctive screen presence, helping establish him as one of the defining action actors of the early 21st century. Professional critics responded to the film with mixed opinions. Many reviewers praised its energy, practical stunt work, and willingness to reinvent familiar action formulas. They appreciated the decision to move away from elegant espionage stories in favor of a rougher, more modern style that reflected contemporary youth culture. Several critics highlighted the movie's confidence in embracing over-the-top spectacle rather than pretending to be grounded realism. For viewers looking for pure entertainment, this unapologetic approach became one of the film's greatest strengths. Vin Diesel's performance received considerable attention from reviewers. Even critics who expressed reservations about the screenplay often acknowledged Diesel's charisma and physical presence. His portrayal of Xander Cage was widely recognized as the driving force behind the movie. Reviewers noted that he possessed the confidence necessary to make even the film's most outrageous moments feel believable. His combination of toughness, humor, and understated confidence distinguished him from many other action heroes of the period. Samuel L. Jackson also earned praise for his performance as Augustus Gibbons. Critics frequently commented that his natural authority and sharp delivery elevated every scene in which he appeared. His chemistry with Diesel created one of the movie's strongest relationships, balancing Cage's rebellious personality with Gibbons' professional discipline. Many reviewers appreciated the humor generated by their contrasting perspectives, noting that Jackson brought credibility to the government side of the story without diminishing Cage's individuality. The film's action sequences received some of the most enthusiastic responses. Reviewers consistently praised the motorcycle chases, vehicle stunts, explosions, and large-scale practical effects. The opening bridge sequence, the avalanche chase, and climactic action scenes were often singled out as memorable highlights. Even critics who were less enthusiastic about other aspects of the movie generally acknowledged the impressive technical achievement involved in creating many of these spectacular sequences. Another frequently praised aspect was the film's visual style. Dean Semler's cinematography, Rob Cohen's energetic direction, and the movie's dynamic editing combined to create a distinctive visual identity. Critics recognized that XXX deliberately avoided the refined appearance of classic spy thrillers in favor of a grittier, more aggressive presentation. While some reviewers found the rapid editing excessive, others believed it perfectly matched the film's adrenaline-fueled personality. However, not every aspect of the movie received universal praise. The screenplay became one of the most common targets of criticism. Some reviewers argued that the story relied heavily on familiar action movie conventions despite presenting an original central concept. Certain plot developments were described as predictable, and several critics believed that some supporting characters deserved greater development. While audiences generally accepted these elements as part of the genre, reviewers looking for greater narrative complexity often found the script relatively straightforward. Dialogue also divided opinion. Supporters appreciated the film's confident, humorous style and memorable one-liners, arguing that they suited the larger-than-life tone of the story. Others believed certain lines felt overly exaggerated or intentionally exaggerated for dramatic effect. Nevertheless, many of these quotes became memorable among fans precisely because they reflected the movie's willingness to embrace entertainment without excessive seriousness. Some critics also questioned the film's realism. The extraordinary stunts, impossible escapes, and extreme action sequences required audiences to willingly suspend disbelief. For viewers expecting realistic espionage, these moments sometimes felt implausible. On the other hand, many fans argued that realism was never the film's objective. Instead, XXX aimed to deliver excitement, imagination, and spectacle, succeeding by fully committing to its own unique style rather than attempting to imitate more grounded thrillers. Comparisons with the James Bond franchise appeared frequently in reviews. Many critics described XXX as a younger, louder, and more rebellious alternative to traditional spy movies. Some viewed this comparison positively, praising the film for modernizing the espionage genre and appealing to a new generation. Others believed the movie lacked the sophistication, mystery, and elegance associated with Bond adventures. Regardless of individual opinions, these comparisons demonstrated that XXX had successfully positioned itself as a genuine competitor within the spy action genre. Audience reactions proved considerably more enthusiastic than many critical reviews. Younger viewers especially embraced Xander Cage as a refreshing alternative to conventional heroes. His tattoos, leather clothing, fearless attitude, and extreme sports background reflected the interests and fashion trends of the early 2000s. Rather than aspiring to become a polished secret agent, Cage remained authentic to his personality throughout the story. This authenticity resonated strongly with audiences who valued individuality and independence. The movie also performed exceptionally well in the home entertainment market. DVD sales became another major indicator of its popularity. During the early 2000s, DVD ownership was rapidly expanding, and XXX became a favorite among viewers who enjoyed revisiting its spectacular action sequences. The high-quality home video presentation allowed audiences to appreciate the impressive stunt work repeatedly, helping the film build an even larger fan base after its theatrical release. Television broadcasts further increased the movie's popularity over the following years. As the film appeared regularly on cable and network television around the world, new generations of viewers discovered Xander Cage's adventures. Many people who had been too young to watch the movie during its theatrical release later encountered it through television or home media, contributing to its long-term cultural presence. Although XXX did not become a major award contender in the traditional sense, it received recognition in categories celebrating action filmmaking, technical achievement, and popular entertainment. More importantly, its greatest achievement was earning the loyalty of audiences rather than collecting prestigious trophies. The film demonstrated that commercial success and lasting fan appreciation could exist independently of critical consensus. Retrospective reviews have generally become more favorable over time. As early 2000s action cinema has experienced renewed appreciation, many critics and fans have revisited XXX with greater admiration. Modern audiences often praise its practical stunt work, charismatic performances, energetic pacing, and willingness to embrace pure entertainment without becoming overly self-conscious. In an era where computer-generated effects became increasingly dominant, many viewers now appreciate the film's reliance on physical stunts and real locations even more than they did upon its original release. The movie's continued popularity eventually led to the expansion of the franchise. Although Vin Diesel temporarily stepped away after the original film, the success of XXX encouraged additional installments and ultimately brought Diesel back to the role years later. This return demonstrated the lasting affection audiences held for both the character and the original movie. Looking back today, the reception of XXX illustrates an interesting divide between critical evaluation and audience enjoyment. While reviewers identified weaknesses in the screenplay and narrative complexity, audiences embraced the film's confidence, originality, action, humor, and unforgettable central performance. Over time, its reputation has steadily improved, with many now recognizing XXX as one of the defining action films of the early 2000s. More than 2 decades after its release, it continues to be celebrated as an energetic, stylish, and unapologetically entertaining blockbuster that successfully created its own identity within the crowded world of action cinema. More than 2 decades after its release, XXX remains one of the most recognizable action films of the early 21st century. While many action movies achieve brief commercial success before gradually fading from public memory, XXX managed to leave a lasting impression on audiences, filmmakers, and the action genre itself. Its influence can be seen in the evolution of modern action heroes, the blending of extreme sports with blockbuster filmmaking, the growing emphasis on practical stunt work, and the willingness of studios to develop franchises around unconventional protagonists. Although the movie received mixed critical reviews when it first premiered, its long-term legacy has become considerably stronger with the passing of time. Perhaps the film's greatest achievement was proving that audiences were ready for a new type of action hero. Before XXX, most cinematic spies followed a familiar formula. They were highly trained professionals who dressed elegantly, followed military discipline, and represented established institutions. Xander Cage completely challenged that tradition. He entered the story as an outsider who distrusted authority, performed dangerous stunts for entertainment, and possessed no formal espionage training. Rather than changing his personality to fit the government adapted its methods to make use of his unique abilities. This concept influenced later action films by encouraging studios to create heroes with unconventional backgrounds. In the years following XXX, audiences increasingly accepted protagonists who were hackers, criminals, race drivers, athletes, engineers, or ordinary civilians forced into extraordinary circumstances. The definition of an action hero became much broader than it had been during previous decades. While XXX did not create this trend entirely on its own, it became one of the most successful examples demonstrating that audiences welcomed fresh approaches instead of repeated formulas. The movie also played an important role in bringing extreme sports culture into mainstream blockbuster cinema. During the late 1990s and early 2000s, skateboarding, motocross, BMX riding, snowboarding, freestyle skiing, and base jumping were becoming increasingly popular around the world. Television broadcasts, international competitions, and sponsorship deals introduced millions of people to athletes performing extraordinary physical feats. XXX embraced this cultural movement completely, making extreme sports an essential part of both its story and its visual identity. Instead of simply inserting occasional stunt scenes, the film built its entire protagonist around that lifestyle. Xander Cage approached every obstacle with the confidence of someone accustomed to taking calculated risks. This integration of extreme sports into character development inspired other productions to explore similar ideas. Action films increasingly featured freerunning, parkour, mountain biking, wingsuit flying, and other athletic disciplines as central storytelling elements rather than occasional visual attractions. Another lasting contribution involved practical stunt work. While digital visual effects were becoming increasingly sophisticated during the early 2000s, XXX deliberately relied on real stunt performers whenever possible. Professional athletes, experienced motorcycle riders, precision drivers, and stunt coordinators performed many of the movie's most memorable sequences. The authenticity visible on screen became one of the film's defining characteristics. As audiences later began expressing appreciation for practical filmmaking, XXX benefited from changing attitudes toward action cinema. Modern viewers often praise movies that rely on genuine physical performances rather than excessive computer-generated imagery. Looking back, many fans recognize XXX as part of a generation of action films that preserved traditional stunt craftsmanship during a period of rapid technological change. Its practical approach now represents one of its greatest strengths. The character of Xander Cage also became one of Vin Diesel's most recognizable performances. Although Dominic Toretto eventually became his signature role for the Fast and Furious franchise, Xander Cage established another successful action identity that differed significantly from Toretto while maintaining many of Diesel's strengths as a performer. Both characters value loyalty, confidence, and courage, but Cage possesses a more rebellious personality and a greater willingness to challenge authority. Together, these two franchises helped define Diesel's career as one of Hollywood's leading action stars. The success of XXX naturally led to franchise expansion. The original movie introduced audiences to a world where unconventional individuals could become secret agents, providing countless opportunities for future adventures. A sequel, XXX, State of the Union, was produced without Vin Diesel returning as Xander Cage. Instead, a new protagonist was introduced in an attempt to continue the franchise while exploring a different style of hero. Although the sequel achieved only moderate success compared to the original, it demonstrated the strength of the franchise concept itself. Studios believe the XXX universe remained commercially valuable even without its original leading actor. However, audience reactions made one point increasingly clear. For many viewers, Xander Cage was the heart of the series. His personality, charisma, and relationship with Augustus Gibbons formed the emotional foundation that audiences most strongly associated with the franchise. Years later, Vin Diesel returned in XXX, Return of Xander Cage, bringing renewed attention to the original film. His return generated excitement among longtime fans who had waited more than a decade to see the character again. The third installment embraced many of the qualities that audiences had loved about the first movie, including spectacular stunts, international settings, large ensemble casts, and unapologetic action spectacle. The success of Diesel's return confirmed the enduring popularity of Xander Cage as an action hero. One of the reasons XXX has remained popular for more than 2 decades is that different generations of audiences have interpreted the film in different ways. While critics often focus on its story structure, dialogue, or comparisons with other action movies, viewers tended to connect with the film on a much more emotional level. For many people, XXX represented freedom, individuality, and the excitement of living without fear. It was not simply another spy movie filled with explosions and car chases. It became a fantasy about breaking rules, challenging expectations, and proving that ordinary people with extraordinary courage could change the world. When the film was first released in 2002, audiences were experiencing a period of rapid cultural change. Technology was advancing quickly. The internet was becoming part of everyday life. Extreme sports were reaching mainstream popularity, and younger generations were beginning to reject many of the traditions that had shaped previous decades. In that environment, Xander Cage felt like the perfect action hero for the time. He represented someone who did not ask permission to be himself. Instead of trying to fit into society's expectations, he created his own path and forced others to adapt to him. Many young viewers immediately connected with this idea. They saw Cage as someone who remained authentic regardless of the situation. Even after joining a government mission, he never abandoned his personality, clothing, attitude, or sense of humor. Rather than becoming another uniformed agent, he stayed true to the rebellious lifestyle that defined him from the beginning. This consistency made the character feel genuine, and audiences appreciated that the story never required him to sacrifice his identity simply to become a hero. For teenagers and young adults, the film represented independence. Xander Cage was not wealthy, politically connected, or highly educated in traditional ways. His greatest strengths came from confidence, determination, creativity, and experience gained through living life on his own terms. Many viewers interpreted this as a message that success does not always depend on following conventional paths. Instead, unique talents and original thinking could become valuable advantages when facing difficult challenges. The movie also appealed strongly to fans of extreme sports. During the late 1990s and early 2000s, skateboard and motocross, BMX riding, snowboarding, surfing, and freestyle sport experienced enormous popularity. Many viewers who participated in these activities rarely saw themselves represented as heroes in major Hollywood productions. XXX changed that by placing an extreme sports athlete at the center of an international action adventure. For those audiences, the film felt refreshing because it acknowledged a culture that mainstream cinema had often overlooked. Another reason audiences embraced the movie was its refusal to take itself too seriously. While the story involved dangerous criminals and global threats, it never became overly dark or emotionally exhausting. Humor appeared naturally throughout the film, usually through Xander Cage's sarcastic personality or his interactions with Augustus Gibbons. Viewers often described the movie as fun rather than simply exciting. This sense of enjoyment encouraged repeat viewings because audiences knew they would experience both thrilling action and entertaining character moments. Many people interpreted the relationship between Cage and Gibbons as symbolic of two generations learning to respect one another. Gibbons represented experience, discipline, and traditional methods. Cage represented youth, innovation, and independence. Initially, they viewed each other with skepticism. Over time, however, both characters realized they could accomplish more by combining their strengths rather than competing. Audiences appreciated this message because it suggested that cooperation between different perspectives creates better results than insisting only one approach is correct. Yelena also became an important character for many viewers. Rather than functioning only as a romantic interest, she represented someone struggling to reclaim control over her own life. Audiences often sympathized with her gradual journey toward freedom. Her decisions demonstrated that courage sometimes involves leaving familiar situations behind, even when doing so involves enormous personal risk. Many viewers believe her relationship with Cage succeeded because it developed through trust rather than instant attraction. One of the reasons XXX remains an entertaining action film more than 2 decades after its release is that its characters experience meaningful development throughout the story. Although the movie is filled with spectacular stunts, explosions, and high-speed chases, the action is supported by personal journeys that give emotional purpose to the adventure. Every major character begins the film with a distinct worldview, and through conflict, relationships, and difficult choices, each of them changes in important ways. Some characters grow stronger. Some discover new priorities, while others become trapped by their own beliefs. Together, these character arcs provide the emotional foundation that allows the action to feel engaging rather than empty. At the center of the story is Xander Cage, portrayed by Vin Diesel. When audiences first meet him, Cage appears to be someone who lives entirely for excitement. He performs dangerous extreme sports stunts, openly challenges authority, and enjoys living outside the boundaries of conventional society. To many observers, he looks irresponsible, reckless, and unwilling to accept responsibility. However, the film gradually reveals that this first impression is incomplete. Beneath his rebellious image is a man guided by a strong moral compass who simply refuses to respect authority that has not earned his trust. Cage's journey is not about becoming a completely different person. Instead, it is about discovering that his unique talents can serve a greater purpose without forcing him to abandon his identity. Unlike many traditional heroes who must learn discipline by rejecting their previous lifestyles, Cage succeeds precisely because he remains true to himself. His independence, creativity, athletic ability, and willingness to take risks become the qualities that allow him to accomplish what conventional agents could not. At the beginning of the film, Cage avoids commitment whenever possible. He enjoys freedom and prefers solving problems on his own terms. Accepting the mission from Augustus Gibbons represents the first major step in his development because it requires him to trust someone outside his usual circle. Initially, he treats the assignment almost like another extreme challenge rather than a genuine responsibility. As the mission progresses and innocent lives become threatened, however, his perspective gradually changes. One of the most significant aspects of Cage's development is his growing sense of responsibility. He begins the story motivated largely by personal survival and curiosity. By the conclusion, he willingly risks his own life to prevent a catastrophe that could affect countless innocent people. Importantly, this transformation never feels forced. Every dangerous situation teaches him something new about leadership, sacrifice, and the consequences of inaction. Rather than becoming less adventurous, he simply finds a more meaningful purpose for his courage. Another important element of Cage's character arc involves trust. Throughout much of the story, he assumes that government institutions cannot be relied upon. His previous experiences have convinced him that authority often creates more problems than it solves. Augustus Gibbons gradually challenges this belief. Instead of demanding unquestioning obedience, Gibbons recognizes Cage's individuality and gives him room to operate independently. This mutual respect develops slowly through shared experiences, allowing Cage to understand that trustworthy individuals can exist even within systems he normally distrusts. Despite these changes, the film wisely avoids turning Cage into a conventional secret agent by the ending. He remains sarcastic, fearless, unconventional, and independent. His growth lies not in changing who he is, but in expanding his understanding of what someone like him can accomplish. This subtle approach makes his development feel authentic because audiences recognize the same personality that captivated them during the opening sequence. Augustus Gibbons experiences a quieter but equally meaningful character arc. As a senior National Security Agency official, he begins the story believing that unconventional people might offer valuable solutions, but even he has limits regarding how much freedom he is willing to grant. Recruiting Cage represents a significant professional gamble. Throughout the mission, Gibbons repeatedly finds himself questioning whether he made the correct decision. One of the most overlooked strengths of xXx is the way its costume and production design help establish the personalities of its characters and the world they inhabit. While audiences often remember the explosive action sequences, motorcycle chases, and spectacular stunts, much of the film's identity is created through visual details such as clothing, architecture, props, vehicles, interiors, and carefully designed locations. Every costume and every environment contributes to the storytelling by communicating information about the characters before they even speak. Together, the costume department and production designers created a world that felt believable, stylish, and completely different from the polished espionage settings that audiences had come to expect from traditional spy films. The first and most important costume in the film belongs to Xander Cage. From the moment he appears on screen, his appearance immediately tells the audience who he is. Instead of wearing a tailored suit or military uniform, Cage is dressed in leather jackets, sleeveless shirts, combat boots, cargo pants, fingerless gloves, chains, and practical clothing designed for movement rather than elegance. His wardrobe reflects a culture of extreme sports, underground music, and street fashion that became increasingly popular during the late 1990s and early 2000s. His clothing symbolizes independence. Nothing about his appearance suggests conformity or obedience. The leather jackets project toughness, while the cargo pants and boots emphasize practicality rather than style alone. Every piece of clothing looks worn and functional, suggesting someone who spends more time outdoors than inside luxury hotels or government offices. This immediately separates Cage from classic cinematic spies and reinforces the film's central message that heroes can come from unexpected places. The tattoos covering Xander Cage's body are another important aspect of his visual identity. At the time of the film's release, heavily tattooed protagonists were still relatively uncommon in major Hollywood blockbusters. Rather than hiding them, the filmmakers deliberately highlighted Cage's tattoos as expressions of individuality and personal history. They symbolize someone who proudly embraces his own identity without worrying about conventional expectations. The tattoos also reinforce a rebellious image that initially causes government officials to underestimate him. One particularly effective element of Cage's costume design is that it evolves very little throughout the film. Unlike many heroes who receive increasingly sophisticated uniforms as the story progresses, Cage continues wearing clothing that reflects his personality even after becoming an intelligence operative. Although he occasionally incorporates specialized equipment necessary for particular missions, his fundamental appearance remains unchanged. This visual consistency supports his character development by showing that he never abandons his identity despite accepting greater responsibility. Augustus Gibbons provides a deliberate visual contrast. His wardrobe consists primarily of tailored suits, long coats, professional jackets, and carefully selected accessories appropriate for a senior government official. Everything about his appearance communicates organization, discipline, and experience. His clothing lacks unnecessary decoration because his authority comes from confidence rather than style. Whenever Cage and Gibbons appear together, their contrasting costumes immediately communicate the differences between their personalities even before dialogue begins. Interestingly, as the story develops, these visual differences become symbolic of their growing mutual respect. Although neither character adopts the other's style, audiences begin seeing them less as opposites and more as complementary figures. Their clothing remains different, but their partnership demonstrates that individuals from completely different worlds can work together successfully without sacrificing their identities. Yelena's wardrobe plays an equally important storytelling role. At the beginning of the film, her clothing reflects the glamorous yet controlled environment surrounding Anarchy 99. She wears elegant outfits that project confidence while also suggesting that appearance has become part of the lifestyle imposed upon her. The costumes communicate sophistication, but they also hint at emotional distance. She appears beautiful yet carefully guarded, reflecting someone who has learned to conceal her true thoughts. One of the defining characteristics of xXx is its confident and energetic screenplay. While the film is widely known for its explosive action sequences, motorcycle chases, and spectacular practical stunts, the dialogue plays an equally important role in shaping its identity. The screenplay understands that the audience is not simply watching vehicles crash or buildings explode. They are following characters with distinct personalities whose conversations establish relationships, reveal motivations, create humor, and maintain the fast pace that defines the entire film. Rather than attempting to imitate the elegant sophistication of traditional spy movies, the writers deliberately created dialogue that reflects the rebellious, straightforward, and fearless attitude of Xander Cage. The screenplay was written with a clear objective from the very beginning. Instead of introducing another polished government agent, it presents an unconventional hero whose way of speaking immediately separates him from the world of professional espionage. Xander Cage rarely uses formal language or carefully rehearsed speeches. His dialogue is direct, sarcastic, confident, and often humorous. Every line reinforces the idea that he comes from a completely different environment than the intelligence officers who recruit him. This contrast becomes one of the screenplay's greatest strengths because it creates natural conflict without requiring constant action. When audiences first meet Cage, they quickly understand his personality through the way he speaks. He questions authority without hesitation, jokes even during dangerous situations, and refuses to be intimidated by people with greater political or military power. The dialogue communicates that courage is simply part of his nature. He does not attempt to sound heroic because confidence already comes naturally to him. This relaxed attitude helps make the character believable despite the extraordinary situations he encounters throughout the story. Vin Diesel's performance also contributes significantly to the effectiveness of the dialogue. His naturally deep voice and measured delivery give simple lines greater weight than they might otherwise possess. Rather than speaking rapidly, Diesel often allows short pauses before important statements, creating an impression of calm confidence. This rhythm makes Cage appear thoughtful even when delivering humorous remarks or sarcastic responses. The screenplay provides the words, but Diesel's performance transforms them into memorable moments. Another major strength of the script is the relationship between Xander Cage and Augustus Gibbons. Their conversations establish one of the movie's most entertaining dynamics. Gibbons represents order, discipline, and institutional authority, while Cage represents freedom, improvisation, and independence. Their dialogue frequently resembles a debate between two intelligent people who approach problems from completely different perspectives. Neither character completely dominates these exchanges, allowing both viewpoints to remain believable. Samuel L. Jackson brings tremendous authority to Gibbons through his vocal performance. His dialogue is often concise, direct, and delivered with complete confidence. Even when Cage challenges him, Gibbons rarely loses composure. Instead of shouting or becoming defensive, he usually responds with calm determination and occasional humor. This restraint strengthens his character because it demonstrates experience rather than insecurity. The screenplay wisely avoids making him a stereotypical angry government official. Instead, he becomes someone capable of recognizing talent even when it appears in unexpected forms. The conversations between Cage and Gibbons also serve an important structural purpose. They allow the audience to understand the mission without relying on lengthy exposition. Rather than presenting information through formal briefings alone, the screenplay turns exposition into character development. Every disagreement between the two men reveals not only details about the mission, but also their evolving relationship. As trust grows, their conversations gradually shift from confrontation toward mutual respect. Humor represents another essential element of the screenplay. Unlike many action films that interrupt tension with forced jokes, XXX allows humor to emerge naturally from personality. Cage's sarcastic observations, his refusal to behave like a conventional secret agent, and his reactions to increasingly absurd situations create comedy without undermining the seriousness of the central threat. This balance prevents the film from becoming emotionally exhausting while maintaining its adventurous tone. The marketing campaign for XXX was one of the most ambitious promotional efforts for an action film in the early 2000s. The studio understood that the movie was introducing an entirely new franchise rather than continuing an established series. So every aspect of the campaign was designed to convince audiences that Xander Cage represented the next generation of action heroes. Instead of presenting the film as another traditional spy thriller, the promotional strategy emphasized adrenaline, rebellion, extreme sports, modern music, and explosive entertainment. The campaign successfully positioned XXX as a fresh alternative to classic espionage films and helped transform it into one of the year's biggest box office successes. One of the central marketing ideas was introducing Xander Cage as a complete opposite of the traditional secret agent. Promotion materials rarely compared him directly with existing movie heroes, but the contrast was obvious. Instead of expensive suits, luxury casinos, and elegant cocktails, audiences saw leather jackets, motorcycles, extreme sports, explosions, and impossible stunts. The campaign encouraged viewers to expect something faster, louder, and more rebellious than the spy adventures they had become familiar with over previous decades. Vin Diesel himself became the centerpiece of nearly every advertisement. Following the enormous popularity of The Fast and the Furious in 2001, Diesel had quickly become one of Hollywood's fastest-rising action stars. The studio recognized that audiences associated him with toughness, confidence, and authenticity. Rather than hiding his personality behind the character, the marketing campaign deliberately blurred the line between Vin Diesel and Xander Cage. Interviews, magazine covers, television appearances, and promotional events consistently highlighted Diesel's charisma and physical presence, making him the face of the new franchise. The theatrical trailers played a major role in building excitement. Rather than revealing the complete story, they focused almost entirely on the movie's spectacular action. Viewers saw motorcycles launching through the air, high-speed car chases, explosions, snowboarding sequences, helicopters, gunfights, and massive practical stunts. The trailers maintained an incredibly fast editing style, accompanied by aggressive rock music that immediately communicated the movie's energetic personality. Every few seconds introduced another visually impressive moment, creating the impression that audiences would experience non-stop excitement from beginning to end. Importantly, the trailers also established the character of Xander Cage without revealing too much about his personal journey. His sarcastic attitude, fearless personality, and refusal to follow traditional rules were immediately apparent. Rather than presenting him as a polished government operative, the previews emphasized that he was an outsider recruited precisely because he thought differently. This simple but effective concept became one of the film's strongest selling points. The movie's posters reflected the same philosophy. Instead of complicated compositions featuring numerous characters, many promotional images focused primarily on Vin Diesel. He was often positioned in confident poses, wearing his signature leather clothing, surrounded by flames, explosions, motorcycles, or metallic backgrounds. Dark colors dominated the designs, combined with bold typography that reinforced the aggressive identity of the film. The posters communicated speed, danger, and attitude before viewers even read the title. The title itself became an important branding tool. The simple combination of 3 lowercase letters followed by 3 uppercase letters created a memorable visual identity. The unusual styling immediately distinguished the film from other action movies. Audiences quickly recognized the XXX logo, making it easy to reproduce across posters, clothing, advertisements, websites, and merchandise. The title suggested something extreme and unconventional, perfectly matching the personality of the protagonist. Television advertising expanded the campaign considerably. Short promotional spots aired during sporting events, wrestling broadcasts, action programming, and television shows popular among younger audiences. These commercials focus heavily on explosive visual moments rather than story details. Fast editing, loud music, and dramatic sound effects ensured that even 30-second advertisements left strong impressions. Many commercials ended with memorable shots of Vin Diesel performing dangerous stunts, reinforcing the movie's identity as a high-energy action spectacle. Music played an essential role in the promotional campaign. Since the soundtrack featured artists who were already popular among younger audiences, the studio worked closely with the music industry to cross-promote both the movie and the soundtrack album. Music videos incorporated scenes from the film, while radio stations promoted songs associated with the movie alongside interviews and ticket giveaways. This collaboration expanded awareness beyond traditional film advertising by reaching fans through music channels as well. The soundtrack album became an important promotional product in its own right. Featuring rock, heavy metal, alternative, and electronic artists, it appealed to many of the same people who followed extreme sports culture. Purchasing the soundtrack allowed fans to extend their connection with the movie beyond the theater, while simultaneously introducing new listeners to film through popular musicians. One of the most interesting ways to understand the significance of XXX is by comparing it with other action films from both the decades before its release and the years that followed. While the movie clearly belongs to the spy and action genres, it deliberately avoids following many of the conventions that had defined those categories for generations. Instead of copying successful franchises, XXX borrowed familiar ideas and reshaped them into something that felt modern, energetic, and closely connected to the culture of the early 2000s. Comparing the film with similar productions reveals how unique its identity truly was and why it continues to occupy a distinctive place in action cinema. The comparison most frequently made is with the James Bond franchise. This comparison is understandable because both series involve government agencies recruiting highly capable individuals to stop international threats. However, despite sharing this basic premise, the two franchises approach nearly every aspect of storytelling differently. James Bond represents sophistication, refinement, and tradition. He wears tailored suits, drives luxury sports cars, enjoys expensive restaurants, and moves comfortably through high society. Bond often relies on diplomacy, careful planning, advanced gadgets, and years of professional intelligence training. His confidence comes from experience within the system. Xander Cage represents the complete opposite philosophy. He wears leather jackets instead of tuxedos, prefers motorcycles to luxury cars, questions authority rather than respecting it automatically, and relies on instinct instead of formal training. Cage succeeds because he refuses to behave like a traditional agent. While Bond adapts to any environment through elegance and preparation, Cage adapts through creativity and fearless improvisation. This contrast became one of the movie's greatest strengths. Rather than attempting to replace James Bond, XXX positioned itself as an alternative interpretation of what a modern secret agent could be. The existence of both franchises demonstrates that audiences can appreciate different approaches to the same genre. Another useful comparison is with Mission: Impossible. Both films involve impossible missions, international conspiracies, undercover operations, and dangerous action sequences. However, Ethan Hunt and Xander Cage differ considerably as protagonists. Ethan Hunt is an experienced professional whose greatest strengths are intelligence, planning, teamwork, and technical expertise. Even when situations become chaotic, Hunt generally succeeds through preparation and strategic thinking. The Mission: Impossible films often focus on complex espionage, disguises, infiltration, and carefully executed operations. Xander Cage approaches similar situations very differently. His plans often develop in the moment rather than beforehand. Instead of relying heavily on elaborate disguises or technical precision, he uses athletic ability, instinct, and bold decision-making. Where Ethan Hunt carefully calculates risks, Cage frequently embraces them. This gives xXx a more spontaneous energy compared to the calculated suspense of Mission Impossible. The Bourne series provides another interesting comparison. Jason Bourne also challenges traditional spy conventions, but in a much darker and more serious manner. Bourne is haunted by memory loss, moral uncertainty, and psychological trauma. His stories emphasize realism, conspiracy, and personal identity. By contrast, xXx embraces entertainment without becoming emotionally oppressive. Xander Cage rarely questions his own identity. He knows exactly who he is from the beginning of the story. His challenge is not discovering himself, but finding a meaningful purpose for his abilities. While Bourne searches for answers about his past, Cage focuses entirely on the present and the mission ahead. These differences create two very different viewing experiences despite both films belonging to the espionage genre. The Fast and the Furious also deserve comparison because both films share director Rob Cohen and star Vin Diesel. In many ways, xXx feels like a natural evolution of ideas first explored in The Fast and the Furious. Dominic Toretto and Xander Cage are physically imposing, fiercely loyal, and deeply independent characters who value personal relationships above institutional authority.